Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's session. I'm Gabriel, one of the management executives at FirstDigital, a first technology company. We are very excited to host today's event and give you this great overview of Microsoft Viva. The demand for this webinar has been impressive, and we truly believe that you'll find some value out of today's session. Since the pandemic, various new trends have emerged. Hybrid working became the norm, and we learned to run large part of our business using remote tools with remote people. And we did that quickly. However, it also came with brand new challenges. And at the heart of these challenges are the physical distance that we created in this hybrid world between our information workers and our business operations, and also the physical distance between people themselves. We know now that there's definitely a mental impact on people that work in isolation. We also know that there seems to be both a positive and a negative impact on productivity. So during lockdown, there was without a doubt a measurable increase in productivity. Microsoft's own research on Office 365 usage patterns clearly proved this. But does that productivity gain still exist today? Well, according to Microsoft's more recent research, it does. But a new trend is emerging, and Microsoft refers to this as the productivity paranoia. This refers to the disbelief of managers that the employees are indeed productive in a hybrid world today still. So this webinar looks at a collection of tools that Microsoft has specifically developed to address these concerns, and by offering an end-to-end employee engagement platform. But before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. Today's session will be recorded, and the recording will be made available to you guys after the webinar, and it will be hosted on our YouTube channel. Details will be shared in an email following this webinar. Please feel free to refer colleagues to it who might have missed today's session. Due to the size of the audience, everybody will be muted, and we ask that you post any questions to the Q&A window, of which you'll find a button inside the Teams client that you're using to attend this webinar. Questions asked will be discussed by our hosts either during the course of the webinar or at the end of the session, and we'll allow some time for that. In the unlikely event that we don't get to answer all your questions, we will supply our contact details, and you can post those to us and we'll happily reach out to you. And I guess to try and keep the session interactive and to keep Gary going, please use the emoji function in Teams to indicate your either pleasure or displeasure with any of the statements that he might make. So in today's session, we'll look at how Microsoft Viva supports various employee engagement initiatives. This equally applies to frontline workers, which is a topic we will discuss in much more detail in a follow-on webinar. This session is hosted by Gary Finberg. Like I said, he's one of our senior technical managers in our digital workplace division. And Microsoft is a long-standing partner of FirstDigital, a relationship really that goes back to the inception of FirstDigital. And we're very excited today to demonstrate this technology to you. Also in the background, just a thank you to Stephanie. So if you've got any issues, please contact her using the Teams chat function. FirstDigital, very briefly, we build out various value-added services around the Microsoft technology stack, and our business is underpinned by 4 pillars. We do custom development, both transactional website and mobile applications in our innovation team. And we're also quite proud to announce that only a few weeks ago, we became few of the very few global partners that has an advanced specialization in Microsoft's app modernization practice. Our automation and integration business focuses on automating anything paper, anything process related, and we are long-standing partners of Nintex and K2, and also more recently with OutSystems. Our data analytics team is very much a pure Microsoft BI business. And there we look at Microsoft's data tools on-premise and also their cloud stack, such as Synapse and Power BI. And then lastly, the team that Gary is representing today, our digital workplace team. These guys really focus on building out solutions for customers around all of the tool sets that sit inside the Office 365 umbrella, of which Microsoft Viva and the employee engagement initiatives fall under. So just before we start, and I guess it's a little icebreaker, we're going to present a poll to you, and that should come up in your Teams client now. The question we're asking you today is, are you concerned about staff well-being at the moment? And the options we've selected there or opted to present to you are no, you're not concerned. You don't really feel that that is an area of concern. Or yes, you are more concerned now, especially after COVID. Or yes, you've always been concerned about staff well-being prior and post the pandemic. So if you guys can make your selection, I'll allow you a few seconds to do that. Okay, great. So early indications of the poll indicate that there are some representatives on today's call that's not concerned, but I think overwhelmingly the responses are split between yes, more concerned after COVID, or yes, this has always been a challenge. Great, so thanks for that. So in this session, Gary will explain the components of Microsoft Viva. He'll talk about the challenges that we face post-pandemic, especially focusing on employees, and then he'll take you through the constituent parts of Microsoft Viva. We'll conclude today's session by looking at the questions that you will post in the webinar. So without further ado, Gary, over to you.
Thanks for the intro, Gabriel. Hi everyone, thanks for joining the webinar. So today, as Gabriel mentioned, we're going to be talking about Microsoft Viva and employee engagement, and we'll cover what Viva is, how Viva came about, and the 5 core modules of Viva, and then refer to some of the new modules that have been released subsequent to the core. So as it's a fairly short session, I'm going to do my best to strike a balance between breadth and depth in covering as much of Viva as possible, because it's a broad range of tools and it's a platform. So we'll cover what we can. So fundamentally, Viva is an integrated employee experience platform that's built within Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Teams that gives you the ability to support connection, insights, purpose and growth in your organization, all while leveraging your existing infrastructure and familiar tools. So Viva is about creating employee experiences, not just pushing new tools. Users these days already have way too many tools to deal with, and they'll typically have multiple applications and browser windows open at any given time, which it causes a constant need for application and task switching, which is distracting and counterproductive and pulls users' focus from their core tasks. So the goal of Viva is to simplify that experience by leveraging Teams as a single pane of glass to get your work done. Teams has had phenomenal and exponential growth and adoption since its release, and that's why Microsoft chose to deliver the Viva platform inside Teams as their primary interface. So users are already using Teams for meetings, chats, calls, collaborating on documents, project planning. Plus, it has a tight integration with the Office 365 ecosystem, and coupled with the flexibility and ease of integration with third-party apps and services. So before we get into like Viva modules and features, let's just take a quick look at the context which gave rise to Viva. So over the past few years, Gabriel touched on this initially, the workplace has changed dramatically. The pandemic and lockdown forced an unprecedented global work from home experience. And out of that experience, humans adapt to their experiences quickly. And post-pandemic, we've seen global trends emerge where employees are not just concerned with how and where they work, but also why. They're starting to redefine the role of work in their lives, and they're reevaluating what they call the worth it equation. So it's no longer just about a paycheck, but about prioritizing things like flexibility, human connection, and meaning in their work. They're also rethinking their careers, their work-life balance, their long-term goals, and working conditions. And it's a kind of scenario where, from this disconnect that's, evolved out of this hybrid or work from home experience, companies have kind of become a faceless virtual experience, for employees. They're basically working from home. They communicate via Teams, spend most of their time online supporting customers. So there's very little physical engagement. There's no more that experience of around the water cooler, kind of sharing of information, stories, asking questions, sharing knowledge, that type of thing. So this disconnect has created this sort of lack of loyalty in employees. So, you know, there are a lot of stories of employees kind of having this mindset that while they're kind of happy and they don't have any problems with their workplace, there is no real loyalty or kind of stickiness there. So if they get an offer for like 20% more, you know, they're going to jump ship, you know, and so I think this sort of leads us into some of the tools that we're going to be talking about, which is all around kind of employee engagement and kind of identifying the fact that, you know, while we know, you know, there are still hybrid scenarios where they're 1 or 2 days a week at work, but effectively people are disconnected. So we want to try and deliver the technology and tools to users so that we can replicate or simulate that kind of engagement and kind of bring them back into the fold, so to speak, of the company. So we can like rebuild that loyalty, because that also speaks into like staff retention, you know, and staff are critical, and you know, staff turnover is a major impact, you know, to replace a resource. So that's what we're going to be looking at with Viva today. So just to kind of set the context, we're talking about employee experiences, and you know what an employee experience is not. It's not about wild office parties, champagne and cake, or beer kegs and mini golf in the workplace. The employee experience is all about a people-centric experience. So it's about bringing a whole range of capabilities to bear on the platform that are surfaced inside the flow of work of a user, and in our case, teams. So most users are working in teams. They rely heavily on the Teams chat. Their meetings are driven out of Teams, conference calls, telephony, everything is kind of driven out of Teams. So the idea of Viva as a platform is to bring these employee experiences to bear and surface them inside Teams. So at a high level, what Viva is delivering is communications, so announcements, news and events, surfacing company resources for users, so things like employee portals, apps, workplace services, so the ability for them in the flow of work to be able to access things that are important to them, you know, like pay, benefits, IT, legal, compliance, various organizational services that they can consume. It provides insights. So this is also critical, how do we, you know, as managers understand what our team's issues are, what are primary concerns for our users? How do we understand what their work trends and their work patterns are? So we'll see how sort of insights, which is one of the modules, provides sort of deep analytics and various mechanisms to kind of nudge, which is like a virtual prompt for users, using surveys and various feedback mechanisms to elicit feedback and kind of understand the kind of corporate cultural sentiment. There are tools for knowledge. So it's kind of understanding people and experts in your environment. It's tools for indexing everything in the SharePoint ecosystem and kind of serving it up in the flow of work. And you know, we'll look at Microsoft Viva Topics, so you can see how that works. Also surfacing document and content with between topics and Microsoft syntax. It's all around building communities. So this kind of speaks to the fact that people aren't at work being able to interact physically generally. So how do we create tools to build communities online, to support diversity and inclusion, various interest groups, and to build team cohesion? It's also around well-being. So while this is like a softer side, this is proven to be, after like post-pandemic, is proven to be critical. You know, so how do you, know, if you can speak to people at the office, you can engage with them, you can look into their eyes, and you can get a sense of where they're at. You can understand if they're depressed, if they're angry, if they're kind of hostile to the workplace, and you can address that. But in a remote situation, that's kind of impossible. So again, Viva brings to bear some tools that allow you to kind of your employees to engage so that you can extract from that and understand various aspects of their well-being, like physical, mental, emotional, and even financial. And then growth and development. So this speaks to this large-scale global sort of staff attrition trend, you know. In the UK, economists have coined a term called the Great Resignation, which is just this massive trend of staff attrition happening globally post-pandemic because of the reasons that myself and Gabriel have mentioned. So part of that is also help make it transparent for employees around what their growth path is. You know, show that we've got to provide learning and coaching tools. We've got to sort of have proper onboardings, you know, that so that when it's a successful experience for an employee, they will never forget that day that they were onboarded. If, you know, the difference between them trying to find parking, not knowing, you know, having to ask 1,000 questions for where they need to go, or having a really solid and positive onboarding experience, they remember that. And then talent and performance development. So how can we provide appropriate training? Again, all of this we want this to happen in the flow of work. So we kind of avoid this like task switching and application switching and pulling a focus away from core tasks. So that's sort of in a nutshell, a bird's eye view of what this employee experience is to try and using this Teams platform to surface all of these capabilities, which are in a sense, they're tools, but they're more experiences, as we'll see. So just at a high level, getting into some kind of a business value of these employee experiences. So as I mentioned, you know, like if we've got efficient onboarding, we can have success from day one. We can get an employee on board and up to speed and kind of happy and embedded in the culture, you know, quite quickly, which again is a positive thing. It's going to build that loyalty. We can champion like well-being and focus to improve productivity. So we're going to look at some of the tools for managing well-being and promoting this focus around how do we manage our time. Tools to foster innovation and speed products to market. We can improve loyalty and commitment to reduce turnover and retain employees. So a lot of this is around trying to build that employee stickiness, or that a reason for them to stay, basically, and to want to work at your company. We can save time by facilitating discovery and reuse of content. So that's a massive challenge. I mean, you all know we kind of inundated under like a tsunami of content. And there's some ridiculous stats of the amount of time, like weeks of the year, that customers or users spend searching for data. So using topics and syntax and various of these other tools and connections where we can surface and push this content to users and make that discovery process seamless and effective, we help them save time. Removing traditional collaboration boundaries and improving customer satisfaction through engaged employees. So these are just some of the sort of high-level business values. Okay, so getting into Viva itself, you know, as with Microsoft, generally, Viva is quite fluid. So Microsoft initially released kind of 4 core modules, which were Viva Connections, Viva Insights, Viva Topics, and Viva Learning. And then rapidly, you know, once these things were bedded into the Teams platform and they had the model, they're rapidly releasing new modules now. So Connections, we're going to look at all of these, but is around kind of culture and communication. Insights is around productivity and well-being. Topics, knowledge and expertise, and Viva Learning, skilling and growth. So those are the core modules. Then we'll also look at Viva Goals, which is around OKRs and sort of goal alignment and sort of company purpose alignment. Then looking at the new modules, we're not going to have time for them in this session, but we could potentially run a subsequent webinar where we can speak to these because it's phenomenal capabilities. So Viva Sales is full-blown integration with CRM, and effectively surfacing all the CRM capabilities again into this connections single pane of glass experience. So you're bringing the kind of CRM data and experience and sort of transactional requirements into this sort of single pane of glass experience. Viva Engage is around sort of keeping everyone informed and included in what's going on. Viva Spaces is around knowledge and expertise. Viva Pulse is gathering confidential feedback. So part of the core requirement or a core challenge is getting honest feedback from users. You know, it's important to truly understand. You know, and often if an employee is sitting with a manager, they might be very intimidated and reluctant to really share what's going on. I've got financial problems, I've got problems, family issues, I've got health issues in the family. So Viva Pulse provides like some mechanisms that are integrated into this experience for gathering confidential feedback. And then Viva Amplify is sort of a capability to push and amplify effectively like your corporate message. So it's you know, messages from the CEO down, it's messages from managers, messages from users up to the CEO. So it's this communications kind of experience that's built in. Okay, so just to talk, basically getting into the first of the modules. The primary module that you'll probably engage with is Viva Connections, and that's all around culture and communications. So at its core, Connections is about the idea of a next generation intranet for engaging employees in enabling hybrid work that's all surfaced in a single pane of glass in Teams. So the idea is to kind of shift the traditional thing of users going to SharePoint, for example, to fetch work, you know, and the idea here is that this experience is highly personalized and it's role-based. So it's based on your or the user's role in the business. And the idea is to serve up content, apps, and information that are relevant to the user based on their role, as opposed to what we call broad blasting, you know, which is what we did with content in older intranets, where literally you kind of published all of your content, you know, into this website as in effect, but most of which the users weren't interested in, you know, so you had all this content there, but it wasn't really serving users. So now where things are shifting and with Viva Connections, this is more about bringing a highly personalized and tailored information that's relevant to users when they need it in the flow of their work. So for example, in Teams, and irrespective of where they are or what device they're using. So again, you're going to hear this theme often from Microsoft and certainly in this session, which is around bringing all of these experience and capabilities into a user's flow of work. Because people are generally working in Teams. Obviously, they go to specific apps to do specific functions, but effectively, they're always coming back to Teams, responding to chats, you know, and various other things like running meetings, viewing Teams information, etc. So the goal of this situation here is to bring information that users need to them rather than them having to go and fetch it. And that's a no-brainer. You know, people are busy. There's a ton of information. Instead of having to them go and rummage around for it, why not just understand what they need and deliver it to them in a granular format and all centralized into this single pane of glass that we call it. So from a user perspective, when they open Teams, the first thing they should see is their branded corporate intranet experience in the Teams interface. So this is not really to confuse the issue between SharePoint and Teams, but it's just the direction that Microsoft are using, which is that, you know, SharePoint is this location, it's a storage location. A lot of the content can be developed there, document management happens there, but all of this can be surfaced in a kind of personalized format inside the single pane of glass experience. So Connections uses a concept called the company feed. And the idea there is that this brings all personalized and relevant content from your Office 365 ecosystem into the Connections dashboard, and we'll look at what that is. So for example, company news, events, conversations, and virtually any kind of Office 365 or app data can all be delivered via this company feed. and it gets surfaced in the Connections dashboard via these little interfaces called adaptive cards or tiles. And we're going to talk about these. So these are phenomenal little capabilities that can be heavily or highly customized, and they can also be audience profile targeted for users based on their role. So just getting into Connections. So here we're basically just looking at, at a team site. We've got some like corporate info up here. You can see we've got the SharePoint navigation. So we're kind of bringing SharePoint into the team's experience. And underneath you can see the hint of the company feed. And that's pulling in various types of information. It can be pulling in news, it can be pulling events. But again, remember, it's all personalized so this is like a personalized view of your corporate data. And on the right here, you can see it says dashboard. And here are some of these adaptive cards. So you can see it's a consistent interface, but yet they're surfacing or touch points or entry points into line of business systems, Office 365 applications. They can be as simple as a link or a button or a little bit of a banner of information, but they can also have deep integration, and we'll have a look at that in a sec. So here's also, just to preface all of this, that this entire Viva experience has high fidelity across all form factor type devices. So whether you're using a widescreen, whether you're using a laptop, whether you're using a smartphone, this is all fully responsive from a form perspective, but also like fully responsive and personalized for that device. So this is just showing you what a kind of dashboard looks like on a smartphone. And you can kind of see as this animation moves through, it's kind of quite interactive, that you're not limited to what you can see on the real estate. You can scroll, you can move these elements around, and you can click through to the data behind. So there's some stock information, there's like a COVID check. So you can see how useful this is, where you're not having to scroll around and wade through tons of irrelevant information. This adaptive card experience really focuses like on all your core tasks. And Gabriel mentioned frontline workers. You can also see how this type of experience and interface would play into that frontline worker experience, where literally all those guys are interested in these core functions that they need to perform. And what we'll see is that it's really easy to build this experience. So Microsoft have, kind of built a similar development experience to what you get in SharePoint, where and we'll have a look at that in a minute. So there are three primary different views that you're going to see with Connections. So there's a dashboard view that we've kind of already touched on. There's a feed, and that's going to sort of bring content to you. It's going to let you discover and engage like kind of news, conversations, communities, learning content in the environment. And then resources. So here's also just a customized experience, and ultimately it can contain whatever you need. So just these adaptive cards are pretty critical. So just wanted to kind of touch on it. So these are available to deploy into SharePoint and Teams apps. They're fully configurable. The functionality is really extensible, and with anything from like low code to pro code, depending on what your requirements are. So here you can see there's like a COVID update. It's pushing some metrics. There's some sanitization instructions. Showing kind of some pay information, and here's a Yammer community question. So you can see it's like this full range of functions that this person might be interested in, all in this single pane of glass. I'm not going to go through all of this, but just we are going to share this deck so you guys can browse this at your leisure. But this is highly functional. These aren't just like little banners of information, so you can do real functionality here. So for example, generally like from a pay and benefit, you can have pay stub, vacation information, incentive programs. From an IT perspective, you can have integrate with ServiceNow and have your tickets surface there. Expense reporting, from a facilities perspective, things like COVID crisis response. You can see the functionality there. And then for frontline or information workers, things like shifts, you're tracking task sales and tickets, ability to kind of hand off activities between shifts, and then various job tasks that you can see, timesheets, forms, in, out, connecting with expertise. So you can see this is like deep and rich functionality. It's not just brochureware. So that's Connections at a high level. We will go off into our live Teams environment, so I can show you the Viva interface, and we'll look at some of these live. Next is to look at Viva Insights. And this module is really about productivity and well-being. And some aspects of it cover the softer side, and some aspects are rich functionality and insights. So here we're just looking at a typical sort of Viva Insights kind of dashboard. And just that, Microsoft have provided some great capabilities here. And you can see this will introduce this engagement experience. So for example, this how are you feeling? I know it seems quite simplistic and childish, but this is similar to what you get when you go to a hospital in a foreign country and you've got to answer, how you're feeling. But this is something that you can actually gather some interesting information from people. It kind of sets your focus. So what Viva Insights can do, and obviously this is all configurable. You don't need to go switch it all on. You can switch on elements that you need. But you've got things where Viva Folk or Viva Insights can manage your calendar for you to some degree. So it can identify, like say on a day where you're blocked out you've got lots of meetings, it can find time that's available for you and block that time out as focus time. And so that becomes quite useful in terms of managing your calendar. It also lets you send praise. So this is an important thing, and we're finding this is huge for customers. Is just acknowledging people. People at their heart, they want to be acknowledged, and this allows you to do that. We'll have a look at what that is. It gives you some options for running these mindfulness exercises or mini meditations, and various things. So you can see these are some softer elements, but they're useful for this kind of engagement. So here's an example of sending praise. So, I can just quickly, I can either send praise to one person, or I can send to the team. I can choose, say, it's awesome, hey, Avi, awesome work on handling that support issue, and then send that. And you can also send it to a team. So you're acknowledging that employee in front of the team, and you're kind of building that motivation and that incentive and that aspect. You can also, I know this sounds a bit mechanical, but it's also important to be praising your staff. So this can set up reminders for you and let you know that, hey, you've actually not reached out to this person in a month, send a bit of praise. So other aspects of Viva Insights are these kind of wellness articles. They're cultural alignment articles. So there's a lot of information that they call in the inspiration library, and you can see, and you can look at your team, you could look at your organization, and this is great supporting information. On a more practical level, Viva Insights uses the Graph API to understand everything that's happening in the environment. So literally all of your meeting activities, the documents you're working on, the people you're communicating with, all of that is logged, audited, and chat and sort of captured by this the Graph API, which is kind of like the brain at the heart of the Office 365 ecosystem. And from that, we're able to extract insights. So these insights, and I'm sure you guys have all seen this, you've probably got some aspect of this happening in your Outlook, where you'll get some messages that give you some information around your meeting activities. But this takes it further. So you're able to kind of understand what your team is doing, For example, it allows you to kind of monitor how much one-on-one time teams have had with managers, kind of lets you monitor what's going on with your team. How much time are they spending on their work? How much time are they working over hours? After hours. So here it's telling you like 30% of your group is less than 15 minutes of one-on-one time. So that can prompt a manager. Often guys are busy. This can prompt them to spend a bit of time with the team. Insights can show you some metrics around what's happening with your meetings. So again, due to this whole hybrid scenario, meetings have become like it's back-to-back meetings, which can often be a waste of time. So this helps you understand like long meetings, which were large meetings, which ended early, what people did attend, what people didn't attend, were there any actions that came out of the meetings. So this really helps you shape that experience and optimize it. You can understand after hours collaboration, so you can see if preempt people from burning out, and you can sort of manage your focus time. So that's just quickly around insights. There is deeper aspects to insights, so there are some advanced tools in conjunction with this tool called Glint, and where you can define like sort of deep querying of this graph API to surface a whole lot of kind of deep activity and user data. Viva Learning is about skilling and growth. So remember, we've kind of talked about this need to, as part of this stickiness and retention, to kind of grow this sort of learning experience for the users and skill them up. So Viva Learning is just that. It's basically an interface to surface all kinds of learning content inside Teams, and again, to surface these options to you via chat. So you can search for content, for learning content from a Teams chat. And the idea is that it syndicates, so it has connectors and integrates external content providers like Udemy, Pluralsight, etc., and kind of brings those all into the Teams experience for you. And it lets you do things like kind of pick your interests, which is effectively tagging the content. So, for example, you choose the things that you like, and it goes and matches that metadata with available content and then suggests those to you. So you can see here, I've picked big data, business strategy, etc. But once I save that, Viva Learning is going to go out, understand and map that to the available content, and then promote that content to me. So it kind of brings available content to the user based on their preferences and requirements without them having to go and search for it. And here you can see, for example, here's some Pluralsight content, and you can see what each card looks like. This represents a course, tells you the time, some information about it, how it's rated, the number of times it's been viewed. You can share it. So you can see how you can recommend this to users. You can add this to a calendar. So it's a really powerful way to sort of bring learning to your users. And another great aspect of this is that it looks at people's calendars, and it can identify when you got gaps in the calendar. So one of the classifications for the content is by its duration. So there are things like they're 5-minute primers, so sometimes you've only got a few minutes and you don't know what to do. It might be useful to get a quick primer on, I don't know, digital visionary mindset, for example, something I wouldn't know what it is. And what Viva Learning will do is it'll go look at your calendar and see, okay, and actually tell you, I see you got a gap at 1 o'clock for 15 minutes. Do you want to take a 10-minute course? And it'll list the 10-minute courses or the 5-minute primers. So it kind of even respects your available time to try and push that bit of learning to you. Here are some of the content providers, and this list is growing all the time. And I should note, you can also develop your own content and integrate it into this experience. Viva Topics, it's about knowledge and expertise, and effectively it's your own corporate Wikipedia, ultimately. So what Viva Topics does is it goes out and it indexes your entire SharePoint kind of landscape, and then it identifies based on AI and various algorithms, it looks at sort of usage patterns around how many times things were mentioned, And then what it'll do is it'll decide that this warrants being a topic. This is a topic that users might be interested in. So it creates that as a topic, and then brings it. So it builds all of these topics, and there can be hundreds, potentially thousands of them to start. Although you can set rules on what it is, how strict it needs to be to define a topic, and then you can go and prune those topics. So it might come back and say, okay, SharePoint is say content AI is a topic, and it'll bring that back, and it'll let you go, if you're a content or topic manager, you can go and curate that page. And it's basically a SharePoint page, which is like a Wikipedia page where you can put, relevant, like who are experts in this field, what are existing projects, what IP do we have, what documentation exists around this, a whole lot of stuff. So it's like a Wikipedia page at the end of that experience. And then when you go to Viva Topics homepage, it'll present all of these cards and topics. So you can see the information, and then you can drill through to this page. So what's awesome about this, again, is that theme of bringing this to you in your flow of your work. So when the topic has been defined, you can access it, or you can specify it or reference it with a hashtag reference. So basically, if you look down here in this article, you can see it says A11Y. It's a highlighted, it's a little hyperlink. Now, when a user hovers over that and they get this card, so this is called a topics card. So it's like a high-level snapshot of what this information is. So it tells you what the project is, the people that may be experts in that area, and some other resources around that project. Now you can click on this card to view details, and it'll take you through to this Wikipedia page, which is the full information. So you can see how great this is. Instead of having to go and Google this or search for it, it's right there, like within your applications. And then this is what this endpoint, you can call it, in this case, it's called Infopedia, but it's basically a topic center. And here's one of these pages. So this was a project called Mark 8. Here's some information, and then there's there's pinned files. There's all kinds of information that you can access. And here you'll see it gets surfaced all over the place. So if we go into this, you'll see you want to make that an option. You click on that, you get this card. You can see it says check out Rainier project. You get this card. And this experience flows through the entire landscape. So you can do this in an email, you can reference it, and you get the topics card in a Teams chat. So here you can see here it says Mark 8. And if I click on that, I'll get the topic card and I can link through. So, and this is the topic center. So you can see how powerful this is in terms of bringing information that's relevant to people and avoiding them having to go and hunt this down. And here's what the topic center looks like. I can come and curate this. I can say, yes, keep this as a topic. No, delete it. I can add, who the experts are. I can add files. I can add resources to it. And then Viva Goals. So this is the last one I'm going to touch on, again, just in the interest of time, which is all around purpose and alignment in the organization. So Viva Goals is effectively a goal-setting solution. So like performance management, effectively, that aligns teams to organization's strategic priorities to drive results and create a culture of engaged employees that are focused on achieving common goals. So some typical business challenges around goal setting in organizations is that goals are often defined in the boardroom as quite broad stroke kind of concepts and mission statements, and they're not always clearly communicated down the line, from the boardroom to the floor, effectively around what this is. And also workers are generally unaware of how their daily activities and the work that they're performing contributes or impacts the broader corporate strategies. So again, you can see there's like a misalignment there, between what the corporate goals are and how a developer, for example, sees their role. So they might just think, I'm writing a bit of code, don't really care about it. But if they understand how that bit of code sort of rolled up into various objectives and eventually into your top level goals, they might take more pride. They're like, wow, like this app I've developed is contributing to whatever, this primary mission statement. So that's where goals comes in. It effectively works out of things called, or a framework called OKRs, which is like objectives and key results. And it's a goal-setting methodology that helps teams set measurable goals. And here, this is interesting that most companies set goals. Only 16% of knowledge workers say that their company is effective at setting and communicating the company goals. So in a lot of cases, the lower level staff might have no clue what the company's goals are. So you can see that that's a massive problem. So goals is geared for implementing OKRs and communicating them down the chain from board to managers and their teams, all within, again, the team's familiar experience or even in DevOps. And the goal here is that it allows managers and team members to understand the corporate mission and their role in achieving those goals, which creates a feeling of inclusion and will foster pride in their work. So here's just a little example of an OKR. So our objective is elevate our brand presence in order to attract new prospects and create a fiercely loyal customer following. The annual key result is achieve 5,000 positive reviews. The quarterly objective is increase brand presence among major channels in order to attract new prospects. Quarterly key result is get 60,000 signups by launching new features. And the initiative is develop new social media campaign. So you can see there are many aspects here, but they're not always filtered down. So just looking at goals very, very quickly, I know I need to wrap this up. You can see this is now natively inside the team's experience. Literally go to your menu and choose goals. And here you can see the experience. It allows you to define your OKRs. You can view projects and you can view your dashboards. It lets you set the quarter and which team this belongs to. And then here are your options. So this is at a high level, deliver the best customer experience, share critical insights, and recruit and develop, for example. Then here we can see how this breaks down. So now we're gonna allocate or give visibility to things at a lower level, more granular level, to managers possibly. So they understand their core goals as how they roll up and contribute to the top level goal. And you can see all of this is kind of managed. You've got status and progress, so you can track this. You can support this via data in Excel or now any kind of database on the back end. Shows due dates and allows you to work with this. And here's just how you would define this. So you give it the metric, you're able to set a kind of a threshold and a target activity, how you're going to update and manage and monitor the progress, and what the details are around the team. And here's an example of this. You can see this is embedded inside Azure DevOps. So you can also surface it there from a dev perspective for managing goals around specific projects. And very lastly, Viva Engage, which is around community and communications. So this is all around announcements, like keeping everybody informed and engaged. Storylines, which is, these are all, some of these are similar to like internal Facebook, where you can create, upload, and share stories. So, it's making that personal, sharing stuff about, each ourselves effectively. Questions and answers, analytics, conversations, virtual events. So where companies are using this, they're having these like CEO virtual town hall events. So they're video-based events where users can engage with the CEO or the MD and kind of break down that kind of hierarchy and give that transparency. And then also topics can be surfaced via Engage. So basically, that's it from the the run through of the capabilities. Obviously, as you saw before, there are many more, but we can potentially cover those in a subsequent webinar if there's an interest. Just from a licensing perspective, with your basic Office 365 SKU, you do get connections. For the full Viva suite, there's a deal on at the moment, which is from Microsoft, which is 160 Rand per user per month, which gives you access to the full suite. What you can do is, if you don't have to purchase that, the full suite, you can pay and enable these like topics, goals, and sales as add-ons if you need. And then what we've also included, I'm obviously not going to look at it now, but you guys can get the deck and have a look at this. But it's a full feature comparison around kind of all the Viva capabilities, what features there are, and which SKUs kind of support which which features. Yeah, so basically, as I said, some of these modules are available in your E1 or E3 licenses. You might also qualify for Viva or Frontline Worker, what we call deep dive workshops. So contact us to see if you qualify. And also please reach out for more information or for implementation timeframes. So thanks. And with that, just back to Gabriel for questions.
Gary, thank you so much. Brilliant. That was really a very thorough overview of the constituent parts that makes up Microsoft Viva, which is, like you say, both a platform and a collection of modules. So thank you very much, and I hope that was useful to the audience. We've got about just short of 8 minutes left to take some questions. Chris Botha, who's Gary's colleague in the digital workplace team, has been answering them as we've been going along. So let's just have a quick look at that. Just with regards to our poll results, ultimately 54% of you indicated that employee engagement has always been a challenge. So that's quite insightful to see. 36% indicated that this is now of a bigger concern after COVID. We had a question from Artrip. He asked if there's a clock in, clock out functionality. Referring to the micromanagement culture. And Chris indicated that, yes, that is available as a solution from Microsoft called Shifts, which exists inside Teams. And yes, there was rightfully a concern raised about micromanagement or to be perceived to be snooping on employees. And this is indeed a problem that FirstDigital even grapples with, because we're a highly remote business of about 160 people spread across South Africa. We've even got some international workers, which are employees of ours. And the approach that we've taken to date is to expose productivity measurements to individuals and not and only provide an aggregated view to managers. And that seems to be a healthy balance between keeping an eye on your remote workforce, but also giving them the confidence at the same time that you're not spying on them. So it's an interesting debate to be had, and it's one that we often have. So I do encourage you to reach out to us for a one-on-one conversation around that topic specifically. Chris further elaborated on the licensing. It can be complicated, and when we share this deck, that breakdown of features versus modules versus add-ons and what you get out of the base SKUs with regards to Microsoft Viva will hopefully make that clear. But again, I'll encourage the audience who have any license-specific questions to reach out to your FirstDigital account manager. If you don't know who that is or you don't have one, please contact FirstDigital directly with the contact details that we'll supply to you, and we'll try and put you in touch with that licensing expert to clarify that. Great. I think then, without further ado, if there's no other questions, or if there were questions that you didn't get the opportunity to ask, please reach out to us directly, info@firstdigital, and we'll refer you to our digital workplace team. But I want you to use this opportunity to thank all of you for attending today. I hope it was insightful. Also, as part of our deck on this final slide, we will include a link, like I said, to the recorded version of this webinar. And we've also included in the deck some clickable links to more information around Microsoft Viva. Sorry, I see this is some syntax links that's still in our current deck. We'll make sure that those are updated to the Viva links, or at least the description is updated to Viva. Great, but then thank you. Thank you, Gary, so much for your time. And thank you to all of you for attending today's webinar. Have a great day.